Let's shift our focus now to Nova Scotia. John Lohr is the minister responsible for the province's Emergency Management Office. Minister Lohr, thank you for joining us today.
Well, it's great to be on the show, Michael, and thank you for your interest in what's happening.
Absolutely. You know, it's hard to turn your eyes away from what has been happening, but you really have had this firsthand look. You've been touring with the Premier, looking and seeing the areas that were hardest hit by Fiona. Can you tell us a bit about that experience, what you saw, what has stood out for you?
Well, Michael, I've been in different parts of the province, and the severity of the storm is really astounding. It's across a broad swath of Nova Scotia. There's been damage, and up in Glace Bay, certainly, there's just been a lot of damage up there. One of the things that stood out for me was how sometimes a tree would fall in the only place it could fall and not hit something important, and other times there would be a tree fall and the only thing to hit, it hit. So there's some sort of randomness to this storm. One property is devastated. The property right next to it is okay. That stood out for me. I was in Antigonish yesterday, and the severity of the storm in Antigonish was also surprising, and I heard from a number of my colleagues last night. So across Cumberland, Colchester, Pictou, and Antigonish counties, it wasn't as severe in a localized way like Glace Bay, but actually there's a tremendous amount of damage across those counties, and we know it's going to take a lot of work to clear the trees. There's hundreds of trees across power lines, and there's multiple poles knocked over. And even here where I am in Port Williams, locally, the power's back on for me now, but there were a number of poles knocked over here too. So it's a storm that covered hundreds and hundreds of miles of damage. But yet it was somewhat random. I mean, there were areas, homes really hurt and areas really damaged, but right nearby, no damage. So some of it's hard to understand.
Mm-hmm. What would you say is the province's greatest need right now? Just listening off to what you just said, it seems that restoration of power is certainly among the top priorities.
Well, I would say restoration of power is the top priority, and particularly to critical pieces of infrastructure. And we're learning that fuel stations are pretty important. Like, as people are running out of fuel, and there's gas stations have no power, or maybe they haven't had a gas delivery. That's important, and all of the other things that you can imagine are important right now. There's some of our infrastructure is running on generators, but getting power to them, getting power to our cell phone towers, that's all extraordinarily important right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, as you know, Ottawa has deployed Canadian forces to help with efforts on the ground. Can you talk to us about what they are doing, what they will be doing as they arrive and get underway in Nova Scotia?
So the Canadian forces, we're really extremely grateful for the Canadian forces that have already come. We had Canadian forces on the ground as early as Sunday morning, a preliminary team to assess the damage and scout it out. Obviously, tree removal is the number one thing they'll be doing for us, but we're learning that it needs to be a much broader than just in Cape Breton. It needs to be across those four counties I mentioned as well. So as recently as last night, I received a commitment from the Minister, Bill Blair, that there will be more Canadian forces coming. We need more forces to come here.
Mm-hmm. More forces to come. Is that what you hope, in part, the Prime Minister takes away from his visit to Nova Scotia today?
Well, we've already received that commitment from Bill Blair, and I hope the Prime Minister reiterates that, and I'm sure that he will, and I appreciate him coming to visit.
Now, Ottawa says it will help cover costs for people affected by the storm. Your own government is also promising aid to people who are affected. What do you say to Nova Scotians right now who are left with this task of having to rebuild, to clean up in the aftermath?
So, we recognize how hard this is on people, very much so, and I know the Premier wants to help people get back to rights, and we've announced an unprecedented suite of aid for post-storm aid. Never before has there been this broad an announcement. There's the DFA program, the Disaster Financial Assistance Program, which is kind of expected after a storm, and the applications for that are online right now, and we recognize many people don't have the internet, so they're also available in MLA offices and in Access Nova Scotia, and we've sent it to the municipalities too. So we want people to apply for that. That's for uninsured loss. but we've also announced a number of other aid pieces for people, and some of that is not. We're working very hard. We have a team working to get the applications for those programs, which we've announced will be up in a day or two. We're working hard on that. So we're working hard, Michael, to help people through this, and we recognize the hardship this has on many, many Nova Scotians.
Yeah, you know, you look at the photos and they really are heartbreaking. They're mind-boggling. Is there any way of knowing, and I have to ask for a quick answer on this, I apologize, but is there any way of knowing how long this process will be to get people back up and running and back to a sense of normality?
No, Michael, I can't say. I really don't know the answer to that. It will take weeks, maybe months for some people to get back up to normal. If you see some of the infrastructure that's been damaged of homes and farms, it's going to take time to get that fixed. And certainly, we hope that people will have power sooner rather than later. And I do want to give a shout out to Nova Scotia Power and we have a number of crews from Maine, New Brunswick, Quebec, Ontario, and we just really appreciate all those linemen that are coming and people that are coming to work here to help us right now. And they're doing an amazing job. We had 50,000 people receive, or 50,000 points to get their power back yesterday. And but we know that as we go forward, it'll take each. There's some of the places they're going to have to restore power to. It becomes more difficult. They're more remote. There's more trees down, so it'll take time.
Mm-hmm. Well, Minister, we appreciate how busy these last few days have been for you. Really appreciate you taking the time with us today.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Again, thank you for your interest and I know Canadians are watching this within. I know we have their sympathy. We get that message, and we appreciate that very much.
Absolutely, Minister John Lohr.